start?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah. Yeah, so a very good evening to everyone who's present here. So we, the members of the Super K experimental neutrino cohort, have successfully completed our dissertation on the topic, uh, the overview of the Super Kamiokande the Super Kamioka neutrino detection experiment. So this is our final presentation for the dissertation that we have prepared, and this is the order which will be following. I'll cover the introduction to neutrinos, a brief historical overview of neutrinos, and an introduction to the Super K, and a complete historical overview of the Super K experiment, followed by Kiran, who will be covering the construction and the detection principle of the Super K. That will be followed by Anudeep, who will be giving us uh, insights into neutrino oscillations as a whole. That will be followed by Krishna, who will be covering atmospheric and solar neutrinos. The final part of the presentation, which is proton decay and the future research, will be covered by Manohar. So, Manohar, can you go to the next slide? Yeah. So, a very brief introduction to what neutrinos are. We know that the universe is composed of elementary particles that can be grouped together into bosons that make up all the forces that are present in nature, and the fermions that make up all the matter. Now, all of these elementary particles, we can see that they are represented in a single universal table, which is very well known as the Standard Model, which acts as the bedrock of all modern physics. Now, in the Standard Model of particle physics, matter is made up of two types of elementary particles, the hadrons and the leptons. Now, the hadrons are the ones which feel the strong force that holds all the protons together in the nucleus, and the leptons are the ones which are not capable of feeling the strong force. Now, we know that neutrinos are much lighter than their charged leptonic partners, and they interact very weakly with matter. Can you move to the next slide, Manor? So this is the interconversion of neutrino types. This is just an image which I've added to the presentation. Next slide. Yeah. So, okay. So we know that out of the four fundamental forces that are present in the universe, neutrinos are only capable of interacting with two of them, gravity and the weak force, which is completely responsible for the radioactive decay of atoms. Now, yeah. Okay. Now, looking at the fundamental questions that still remain unanswered are what is the value of all the neutrino masses? Are neutrinos Majorana or Dirac particles? What is the mass hierarchy of neutrinos? Uh, is there a CP violation in the leptonic sector? Are there more than 3 neutrinos? What is the relation with the quark sector? Now, in summary, there are many more aspects of neutrinos which are still unknown till date. Now, yeah, can you move to the next slide, please? Yeah. So the history of neutrinos actually began with the investigation of beta decays. Now, during the early decades of the past century, radioactivity was explored and the nuclear beta decay was observed. In this process, a radioactive nucleus emits an electron and increases its positive charge by 1 unit to become the nucleus of another element. Now, the beta decay was studied, and because of energy conservation, the electron should always carry away the same amount of energy in the reaction. In the year 1914, Chadwick showed that electrons follow a continuous spectrum of energies. Now, some of the energy released in this decay appeared to be lost. And in order to explain this observation, there were only two possible solutions. It was either the energy was not conserved or there was an additional undetectable particle which was carrying away all the additional energy. Now, later on in 1932, Chadwick was the one who discovered the neutron. And in 1934, Fermi took Pauli's idea, and on this basis, he developed a theory behind beta decay. And Fermi named this particle as neutrino. The weak force is so weak that the probability of inverse beta decay was calculated to be very close to zero. The possibility of detecting a neutrino still seemed null. Can you move to the next slide? Yeah, so as you can see here, neutrinos are probably the second most common particle in the universe after, which is after photons, and they were produced in huge numbers in the period following the Big Bang. Here you can see is an image of a supernova neutrino burst. The and we can also see solar neutrinos, how they're emitted from the core of the sun. And yeah, can you move to the next slide? Okay. So an introduction to the Super Kamiokande. Now, as we have covered an introduction and the history of neutrinos, we can carry on with this. Now, the Super Kamiokande is the world's largest and low water detector that detects Cherenkov radiation. It has been in operation from 1996, and it is a gigantic neutrino detector which is situated in the town of Kamioka in Japan. Now, the Super K is able to detect neutrinos with energies varying from between a very few mega electron volts to a few hundred giga electron volts, ranging from cosmic neutrinos from far supernovas to the neutrinos made by the common man. Now, the Kamioka Observatory has many goals. Okay, can you move to the next slide, please? Yeah. So the Kamioka Observatory had many goals, and the most significant one is to verify the grand unified theory in physics. Now, in layman terms, the grand unified theory aims on unifying all the fundamental forces that are present in the nature into a single universal force. The research in neutrinos hints that all the types of neutrinos are vital in discovering the GUT. Now, confirming the presence of neutrinos can pave ways for huge breakthroughs in particle physics. Neutrinos come to our Earth from various regions in outer space, and they rarely interact with matter, which makes it much more difficult for the observation of these neutrinos. Can you move to the next slide? Yeah. So, coming to the historical overview of the Super Kamiokande. Now, as the neutrino research continued, Professor Koshiba Masatoshi, who won the Nobel Prize in Particle Physics in the year 2002 for his pioneering work in astrophysics, pinpointed that the Kamioka mine would be the most ideal for neutrino research amongst all other potential sites. Now, the University of Tokyo granted complete approval for all his ideas, and Koshiba, he proceeded to plan and build a neutrino observatory. And he also planned on creating a very large facility inside the Kamioka mine. Can you move to the next slide, please? Okay. So this the Kamioka, the end product of creating this huge facility was the Kamiokande Observatory, which is located almost 1,000 meters under the Kamioka mine. And in 1987, Koshiba became the first person in the world to successfully observe neutrinos from a supernova explosion in the Large Magellanic Cloud. Now, this was mentioned as the main reason for his Nobel Prize. Now, this was one of the major discoveries of the 20th century, and Kamiokande had already accomplished its goal in 1996. Now, the space which used to house the Kamiokande is now being used as the Kamland facility for research, which continues to do neutrino research using different observational techniques. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah. So, the accident that crippled the Super K neutrino observatory. Now, on November 12, 2001, while the tank inside the Super K was being refilled with 50,000 tons of water, a multiplier tube inside the Super K imploded, and this shockwave set off a chain reaction that left more than 7,000 PMTs completely shattered. Now, the scientists surmise what the scientists surmise happened on the morning of 12th November is that the accident was severe, but they would still have to rebuild the entire. Uh, they would still have to rebuild the photomultiplier tubes which had undergone the damage. Now the aim of no, can you go back? Now the director of the Super K, Yoji Totsuka, said that his aim was to fully start up with just about half the original density of all the PMTs within 1 year. And the goal was to fully fix the Super Kamiokande by the year 2007. Now, at the time of the accident, the Super K team was refilling the entire tank after replacing all the burnt out PMTs and making other upgrades. Nearly all PMTs below the waterline had popped, and the tank had also sprung a major leak. You can go to the next slide. Yeah, so commemorating the 20th anniversary of the Super K. Now, on June 17th, 2016, a symposium was organized to mark the 20th anniversary of the Super Kamiokande, which was held in Toyama, Japan. Now, this symposium was followed by a celebration, and both events were hosted by the Institute for Ionizing Radiation Research by the University of Tokyo. Around 250 guests composed of both collaborators and other people who have supported the continual observations of the Super Kamiokande. And the Super Kamiokande collaborators then proceeded to present not only all the results of the Super K research over the last 20 years, but they also explained planned reconditioning of the entire experiment, and they also introduced the next generation project, which was the Hyper Kamiokande. You can move to the next one. Yeah, so the table which you see here, the description of this table is the Super K experiment actually began in April 1996, and it was immediately packed up for maintenance in the year in the month of July 2001. This period was referred to as the SK1 period, which is mentioned in the table. Now, since an accident occurred during maintenance, the experiment then resumed in October 2002 with only half its original number of PMTs. So you can see the drop down in the number of PMTs from 11,146 to 5,182, right? Now, in order to stop further accidents, all PMTs were covered by fiber reinforced plastic with acrylic front windows. Now, this phase from October 2002 to October 2005 was known as the SK2 period. In July 2006, the experiment resumed with the entire number of PMTs, and it again stopped in 2008 for some other upgrades. This era was known as the SK3. Now, the time period after 2008 is understood as the SK4 period. So, Kiran, you can continue.
Yeah, guys, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yes, Kiran.
Yeah, so coming to the construction part, Super Kamiokande detector is constructed underneath the mountain Keno, which is located in Japan. It is around 1,000 meters beneath the mountain, and it is located in the Kamioka mine. So coming to its dimensions, it is housed in a large cylindrical chamber, which measures about 20 meters in radius and 40 meters in height. And the upper part of the chamber is a dome, and like they made it to be a dome because it kind of distributes the weight that is coming off from the mountain. Like it kind of evens out the weight and it protects it from collapsing onto itself. And can you go to the next slides, please? So yeah, the total detector holds about 50K tons of pure water. And also there is a water purification system which constantly purifies the water, pumps in and out. Yeah, can you move to the next slide? So yeah, so basically there are two concentric cylindrical support structures which hold the photo multiplier tubes. They built two concentric cylinders because the outer cylinder kind of shields the inner detector from detecting the unwanted signals from atmospheric and cosmic muons and other charged particles. Yeah. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah. So the detection principle that is used in the detection of neutrinos is Cherenkov radiation. So what exactly is Cherenkov radiation? It is a phenomenon where a charged particle, when it moves faster than the speed of light in any transparent dielectric medium, the charged particle kind of creates an electromagnetic ripple in the dielectric medium, and it gives off a bluish kind of light, which is like further detected by the photomultiplier tubes, which are mounted onto the cylindrical structures that I mentioned before. Yeah. So can you move to the next slide? Yeah. So like I mentioned before, there are multiple neutrino interactions that take place with matter. I mean, generally, we all know that neutrinos interact only via the weak force. So there are certain interactions like the inverse beta decay, electron scattering, and all of those. Can you move to the next slide? Yeah. And now let's discuss about the photomultiplier tubes. Yeah, so photo multiplier tubes are these photo detection instruments which are sensitive to photons. Like they kind of catch very feeble photons and then they amplify signal. So what basically happens here is the photons that come off of Cherenkov radiation, they kind of hit a photocathode, which is a photoelectric surface. After the photons hit the surface, electrons are sent off from this surface, and they are kind of pulled by a intermediate electrodes called the dinodes, which have a varying potential. So that if the electrons strike one dynode, the other dynode with a greater potential attracts it, and then the electrons hit the other dynode with a greater potential, and more number of electrons are produced. And this kind of happens like a chain reaction, and at the end, where the anode collects an amplified signal, which is basically an amplified stream of electrons. And then this signal is sent into electronic huts, which are located above the detector in the dome. Can you move to the next slide? Yeah. So talking about the data acquisition and processing system, the data from the photomultiplier tubes, which are about 1,300 in number, the signals from these photomultiplier tubes are collected, and then these are sent to the electronic hub, which basically detect the number of photomultiplier tubes that are hit with Cherenkov radiation, and the time to digital conversions, and also analog to digital conversions of these signals are stored in here, and also the GPS timestamps. And after that, the data that is acquired is stored in a facility that is located nearby the detector, and sent off for further processing. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So every day, about 500 GB of data is generated from the detector. So this data is like, it is really noisy, and we use Monte Carlo simulations to kind of reduce the uncertainty that is present in the data. So basically, we use a FTDI cable, which is fiber distributed data interference optical fiber link. Like this connects the detector to the facility where the data is stored. So yeah, and we apply various reconstruction algorithms to kind of eliminate all the noise in the background noise that is generated by cosmic and other kind of muons or any charged particles. And we kind of map these onto a particular software, which shows these neutrino interactions. And this is an event where an electron neutrino scatters an electron in water, and it gives off a Cherenkov radiation, which is detected by these photomultiplier tubes. And this data is later sent to be analyzed by researchers. And yeah, now Anudeep will continue about neutrino oscillations.
Good evening, everyone. I hope I'm audible. Okay, so neutrino oscillations, these are neutrinos, as we've already seen, they're almost massless and they contain no charge. And these are the only particles which actually exhibit something known as flavor oscillations, where you have three different kinds of neutrinos, like electron neutrino, muon neutrino, and tau neutrino. And these are the only known particles which exhibit where they exist in a superposition of three states. But once we start measuring them, they might appear to be in a different state than in which they originally existed. So as we can see in the first place, it is a process where a neutrino created with one lepton number can later be measured to have a different lepton number. So the reason why neutrino oscillations, the concept came here is that Super Kamiokande was the first observatory to experimentally discover this particular phenomena, and also the Sudbury Neutrino Observatories, and both were awarded the Nobel Prize for this observation. So neutrinos are generally emitted and absorbed in weak processes, both in flavor eigenstates, but they travel, that is, they move forward in space-time in the form of mass eigenstates. So the oscillation is because of mixing between flavor and mass eigenstates of neutrinos, and every neutrino is a unique superposition. That means with a different probability. So there might be a different possibility of detecting either electron, muon, or tau neutrino. Can we move to the next slide, please? Okay, as you've seen earlier, this is the superposition of states, where the first equation represents the flavor eigenstates, superposition of flavor eigenstates, where ket nu alpha is the alpha, where alpha can be exchanged for electron, muon, or tau neutrinos, and the u alpha I is the constant, is the eigenvalue, and ket nu I determines the mass eigenstates, where since they have definite masses, we take I to be 1, 2, and 3 for the three known neutrinos, and the asterisk there represents the complex conjugate. So this is for when we consider anti-neutrinos, the symbol should be switched for each equations, and since flavors only change for the anti-neutrinos and not masses, we have the asterisk, or we take the complex conjugate only for the flavor eigenstates. Next slide, please. Okay, as neutrino propagates through space, all these three phases, they're actually coherent, but the mass eigenstates, since all the neutrinos have different masses, they propagate at slightly different rates. And as we will see further in a table, it actually depends upon what length these things travel, and that actually determines the kind of probability that we can with which we can measure a particular flavor of neutrino. So here we have the superposition of mixture of mass eigenstates with a different mixture of mass eigenstates corresponding to the different flavor states of neutrinos. As I already told earlier, all the neutrinos exist in a superposition of different mass and flavor eigenstates. So as we can see here, for example, if a neutrino starts off as an electron neutrino produced by a weak process, but later it can be detected as either a muon or a tau neutrino, and it depends upon the eigenvalues that we've discussed earlier in the previous slide. So this phase, the phase oscillation actually is periodic. So every single time the neutrino oscillates, it actually returns to its original state. But this will only happen as long as coherence is maintained. So coherence is basically different states of a harmonic oscillator, a quantum version of a harmonic oscillator. Next slide, please. So this is basically a mathematical equation which gives us the probability that a neutrino will change its flavor from one state to the other, where alpha, beta are different states, and they are not supposed to be equal. And the first equation gives us the actual probability, and the second one is where we consider it in natural units. So natural units is where we consider the reduced Planck constant, the h bar, and speed of light c to be equal to 1. Next slide, please. So this was the table I talked about earlier, where you have different solar atmospheric reactor and accelerator. These are the originators for the different neutrinos, and the L is the length that which with which they have to travel of which they have to travel when, for proper detection, and the energy is the energies that they have in mega electron volts, and delta m square is the change in their square of masses. So here we can see in the reactor and accelerator columns or rows, we can see the length to be SBL and LBL. So this is the short baseline and long baseline. So this term comes from baseline interferometry, where you have two different sources of observations, and the baseline is basically a vector running from one observation to the other, and these are located so that any phase difference in the incoming wave can be measured, because since all the waves travel at the same speed of light, one detector might detect it earlier and the second detector might detect it a little bit slower. So we can measure by the time difference with which these waves arrive at different observation points. Then we can determine whether there is any phase change and whether there is any difference in the waves that are observed. So this is called as baseline interferometry. So here we have the SBL and LBL values for reactor and accelerator neutrinos. I request Ms. Krishna to take it over from here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anudeep. Now we will move to the current research which is happening in the Super Kamiokande. Solar neutrinos play a major role in the detection. So what are the solar neutrinos? Solar neutrino means the neutrinos which are produced in the sun. They are the results of series of nuclear reactions. The net reactions is when the four protons fuse together to form the helium nucleus, and positrons, neutrinos, and energy is released. So why are they important? What's the big deal about it? Majorly, they are useful for the direct understanding of the core of our sun. The current interesting motivation to observe the solar neutrino is Markov-Simorov-Wolfenstein effect. This MSW effect leads to resonant conversion of higher energy solar neutrinos with the sun and results in about 30% level of the survival probability above a few MeV, which is known as upturn. So now we will move to recent results which are produced by the Super Kamiokande. The Super Kamiokande detectors observe the solar neutrinos via elastic scattering between the solar neutrino and the electron in the pure water. In this interaction, the direction of the recoil electron is highly correlated with the direction of incident neutrino. Based on the data of more than 84,000 events, boron solar neutrino is determined to be, the flux of boron neutrino is determined to be 2.335 plus or minus 0.33 into 10 raised to 6 per centimeter square per second. Assuming the pure electron neutrino flavor content, but there is no significant correlation between the observed sunspot and the neutrino. Periodic signal search is divided into two parts: yearly flux measurement and the periodic modulation analysis. The standard solar model has predicted the solar neutrino rate in the core, but it doesn't consider the periodic activities of the sun. Example, the rotation, variation of sunspot, modulation of magnetic fields, and the periodic signal flux. When the periodic signal flux is observed, this leads to an improvement of the standard model. Second, the periodic modulation analysis. In order to search for unexpected periodic signal of the solar neutrino, scientists have performed the periodic search analysis using Super Kamiokande 1 496 data set. The maximum peak is at approximately 9.42 year per second found in the data set, but it is not has been found in the Super Kamiokande 4 data set. The energy spectrum of recoil electron is consistent with the MSW prediction, which is approximately 2 sigma, a level for the global parameter, including the Kamland. Next slide, please. Now moving on to the atmospheric neutrinos. How are they formed? They're produced when the cosmic energy and energy particles space like proton, helium, or heavy nuclear collides with the Earth's atmosphere. They are generated about 15 kilometers above from the Earth's surface. According to the predictions, muon neutrinos and antineutrinos make up around 2/3 of the atmospheric neutrino, while electron neutrino and antineutrino make up the rest. A deviation from 2/3 ratio of was observed in the Super Kamiokande detector, while lesser number of muon were arrived than the predicted amount, provided the evidence of the neutrino oscillations. Atmospheric neutrino also gives the insight on the behavior of the neutrinos and their antiparticles, antineutrinos, which are both detected at the Super K. The 4 observed atmospheric neutrino events categories are fully contained, events that are the events having all their tracks in the inner detector. Second is partially contained, that are the events tracks escaping the heavy track from the inner detector. Then comes the upward through going muons. Muons that are produced in the rock beneath the detector and go through the inner detector without any barrier. Then the upward stopping muons, that are muons that are produced in the the outer detector is used for the filtration of purposes. Super K observes neutrino from all the directions that are produced over the planet. In 1998, using the anomaly provided the clear indication of neutrino oscillation, and the experiments were verified. The oscillation analysis have improved and became precise as the data statistics increased over the last 20 years since the discovery. Currently, the detector is mainly focusing on atmospheric neutrino oscillations, and the also combined analysis from T2K and Super Kamiokande has improved the results. Manohar will take over.
Yeah, proton decay. The Super Kamiokande experiment has been trying to find out proton decay events in 50,000 ton water Cherenkov detector. There are many proton decay modes expected, but for grand unified theory models predicted a proton decaying into a positron and a neutral pion is the most dominant mode, as you can see in the figure. The neutral pion decays into 2 gamma rays immediately. Thus, involving positron, we can observe 3 Cherenkov rings in the detector. One of the simple theories where proton decay can exist is Georgy Glashow model. So he proposed the Howard Georgy and Sheldon Glashow in 1974. Instead of baron number conservation, the quantity baron number minus lepton number is being conserved. Is that baron number minus lepton number? Yeah. So although various proton decay modes are expected, grand unified theory models predict that the proton decaying into positive neutral pion is the most common. The neutral pion, okay. Yes. As we can see, the positron baron number is 1 and lepton number is 0, and even in the right side, the B minus L term is being conserved. Yeah, there are also another improved techniques for detecting this. So protons in nucleus have a Fermi momentum. Thus, proton decay in oxygen has a relatively larger background than hydrogen case. So here in the Super Kamiokande, as there is water, it contains 8 atoms. There are total number of 10 protons, where 8 in oxygen and 2 for hydrogen. So yeah, 1 second. Neutrons often accompany with the atmospheric neutrino interactions, and a neutrino is slowing down in water and is captured by hydrogens, making deuteron and gamma rays. Yes. Super Kamiokande has started measurement since 1996. Is running more than 10 years. However, we have not observed any evidence of proton decay yet. From this result, proton lifetime is estimated to be more than 10 to the power of 34 years. If we find proton decay, it will be a key door for grand unified theory beyond the standard theory. Super Kamiokande will be running towards a new horizon of the world of particle physics. Yes. Yeah. Future research. Supernova relic neutrinos. Coming to supernova relic neutrinos, when a star is 8 times massive than a sun and collapses to produce supernova burst, more than 99% of its energy released during the explosion is in the form of neutrinos. So on February 23, 1987, Super Kamiokande has observed neutrinos from supernova occur in a large Mangelic cloud. There are many supernova events happening on the universe. Since the stellar formation, huge number of neutrinos spread over the universe. This unobserved flux is called as supernova relic neutrinos. Super Kamiokande is working on detecting these supernova relic neutrinos using inverse beta decay. So what is inverse beta decay? When an anti-electron neutrino interacts with a proton, resulting in producing a positron and a neutron. Super K can detect the positron using Cherenkov light, but the detecting of neutron is a major challenge to be faced. For overcoming this problem, 0.2% of gadolinium is dissolved in the water of Super K. As a gadolinium has thermal neutron capture cross-section of 49,000 barns, when the neutron interacts with the gadolinium particle, it emits a beam of gamma rays of 8 mega electron volts, which can be detected by Super K. Assuming various number of electron antineutrinos observations are to be observed during supernova explosions in the coming 10 years. Hyper Kamiokande. So, after the neutrino oscillations detected by Super Kamiokande, it has become necessary to update the standard model. For the further increase in sensitivity of the detector, Hyper Kamiokande has been planned to be constructed for many improvements in neutrino physics. The detector is of, coming to specifications of detector, it is of 71 meters height and around 68 meters in diameter. It also contains, which is 10 times larger than Super K. It also contains ultra-sensitive photomultiplier tubes, which are twice efficient PMTs than in the Super K. There are around 40,000 PMTs which are being installed, which will be installed in the Hyper Kamiokande. The world-leading international research experiments are going to start in 2007 at Hyper Kamiokande. So okay, Hyper Kamiokande is going to investigate the CP violation of neutrinos with the help of neutrinos and antineutrinos from the JPARC observatory particle accelerator. It will also work on ordering the neutrino masses, which not only helps in increasing the precision of CP violation, but also it helps in identifying the neutrino is a major on a fermion or not. Hyper Kamiokande will also search for the proton decay, as it will be the most sensitive detector of the present times. Yes. T2K experiment. T2K experiment is carried out to study how the neutrino changes from one flavor to another. A beam of neutrinos is produced from the JPARC nucleus site, which are directed towards the Super Kamiokande. These values are measured soon. They are out of JPARC using a near detector, which is around 280 meters from the JPARC nucleus site, and they will be observing the neutrinos parameters at the Super Kamiokande. So The change in these values will help the scientists to study about the neutrinos. Recently, T2K experiment has restricted the possible values of CP neutrino CP phase. These results are very important in finding the neutrinos and antineutrinos behave same or not. T2K is now searching for a new source of CP symmetry violation in neutrino oscillations that would manifest a difference in the measured oscillation probability for neutrinos and antineutrinos. As T2K still didn't prove the CP symmetry violation of neutrinos, it is going to improve the near detector and collect more data. T2K is also increasing its beam intensity by customizing the accelerator and beamline. Yeah, after the building of Hyperkamiokande, the Hyperkame will also use this neutrino beam from the J-part for further discoveries. Thank you. Jishnu?
Yeah. On behalf of experimental cohort, I, Krishna, would like to thank Nakshatra and Sagar for letting us work on this wonderful project. I also thank them for the constant guidance, and over this journey of past few days, we have gained knowledge, good experience, and also good friends. Last but not the least, I'd like to thank all the cohort members for supporting each other and showing constant efforts. Thank you.
So experimental cohort, it was a good and good presentation. So firstly, does anyone in the audience has any questions? Anybody? Okay then. So it was a nice presentation, experimental cohort. So you gave an overview of Super K. So starting from the history, their principal detection, the oscillations part, and then how to detect different types of neutrinos and the future research. So it is well put and it is well done. So I would like to get feedback from each and everyone, if you can, please. Like, how was the project? How much did you learn in these 2 months? Like, have you gained any knowledge within these 2 months? Like this.
Yeah, actually, we have learned more than what we actually anticipated, to be honest. Working with you was fun. You were always interactive whenever we invited you to our voice channel. Yeah, it was very supportive of you. And we are like grateful to be working with you, man.
Yeah. So I'm glad that I could help you guys. So anyone else?
Yeah, like when I joined the Nakshatra, like before I didn't know any much of these astronomy things. I was at very starting stage. After getting into this internship, like I got to know many things. Yeah, it was very exciting and very fun way. Like the quizzes which are conducted, they were very efficient in gaining more and more knowledge. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Manohar, for telling that. So anyone else?
Yeah, it was. I had a wonderful experience actually, and I got to meet many of my peers and people who actually share the same interest. There are actually very few platforms that actually provide this, provide the way of a way for all these people to communicate with each other. And I thank and congratulate the Nakshatra group, every single one from Sagar and everyone behind the team for providing us with a wonderful opportunity to learn. Thank you.
Yeah. Welcome, Anadeep. Okay, so who is left?
Can I go next?
Yeah, you can.
Oh, okay. Yeah, when I started this project, I truly didn't know like the thing called astroparticle physics exists. So out of interest, I had a little knowledge about gamma ray astronomy, and that's why I choose to be in this project. Like I didn't know at all, and right from scratch, I have learned everything. I would like to mention that in the week 0, I was not able to speak with people when I started as when I volunteered for the leadership position, I was not able to interact at all. So yeah, eventually I learned how to communicate my thoughts in a scientific manner with everyone, and people also have cleared my doubts. We had fun discussing the things, watching the videos, everything related to it, and I felt so comfortable when I started to interact, and it was all in all a growth for me. I didn't know what particle physics was, and right now I have a good knowledge about it, and I would like to continue uh, doing work. I will continue doing my work in this field. And I personally thank Sagar for all the constant support and meeting us, guiding us all the time. And of course, Nakshatra for letting us do this project. It was a wonderful time with you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm truly welcomes Krishna that you gained enough knowledge. So initially you told that it was very tough to communicate, but you became a cohort leader, and I think you did well leading them. Okay, so anyone left?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jishnu.
Yeah. So I got to know about this program through through a college club, which I'm a part of. So initially, there wasn't any goal that I had in mind while joining the program, but I joined just because I had some extra time on my hand. And surprisingly, like, there was so much that I learned throughout the entire program. Like in the initial weeks, I was not able to communicate my ideas well, but I was actually able to, see people talk to each other, and from that itself, I had gained so many things. And like, as time passed on, like in the first second week, I was able to, put my thoughts in scientific terms, and I got to know the importance of communication when it comes to, talking about science with other people. And there are so many people with whom I've interacted throughout the program, and each discussion was so fruitful. And I'll always remember that Feynman diagram discussion that we had the other day, Sagar. I'll never forget that. That was really fun. And
Yeah.
yeah, just one thing I would say is, like, during the final parts of the during the final weeks of the program, I guess it would have been much better if like the mentoring sessions would have continued. And I guess, yeah, that would be one critical point that that could be improved upon, I guess. But apart from that, everything else was really good. This was like such an enriching experience for me
Yeah,
right from week 0.
I also agree with Jishnu that if we had the guidance, especially for the experimental neutrino cohort, we would have produced even better results, I guess.
Okay. So actually what happened was initial 4 weeks we were helping you from week 0 to week 3, but after week 3 we thought that we gave 4 weeks of guidance, but let us see how they will produce results on their own. Like yeah, we did like 4 weeks of guidance, but last 2 weeks we thought we'll see how they'll produce on their own, like how you will do literature survey, and only then you will be able to get a good experience. We thought in that manner actually.
Yeah,
But
I
whenever
totally
you were,
agree you on that. What exactly we are talking about is the mentor session that we had on the weekends.
oh, with Shalini ma'am.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we are talking about. She's from the experiment, like she has experience on the experimental things, right? So I thought we personally, all as members, thought that it would have been beneficial for us if we would have interacted with her more.
Okay.
Mm.
So actually, the one thing was Shalini ma'am became a bit busy, I think, because she got some other internship under a good organization. So I think she became a bit busy, but from next time we'll try on to keep constant mentoring session then.
Yeah, that's the only thing we felt. Otherwise, everything was cool. Yeah, we were Like initially, right from level 0, here are we now, and I'm feeling truly good. Yeah.
Yes, Sagar,
Yeah,
I
bro.
have a question.
Yeah, Nadeep.
Will you keep the Discord channel open after this session, or will you guys be closing it, the classroom one?
Will not be closing. Rather, we already have a virtual campus.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know the Discord server.
yeah,
So
yeah,
what
yeah.
we can do is, today itself I'll create a neutrino channel in a research and thing, or else as a club. So what we can do is, many neutrino project members said that could we continue our research, or could we have discussion sessions like this. So what I'll do is, I'll create a voice channel and a text channel, so you guys can surely continue discussing in that virtual campus Discord server. Why? Because the new set of projects will be happening in classroom. So we'll be having like new projects like LaTeX project 1 and the Epoch mega project, the same way how Solstice was there. So we'll be having like 4 to 5 cohorts in Epoch with different problem statements and different agendas. So if want, even you guys can enroll and come to that project during September month. So about neutrinos, I think you can continue in virtual campus Discord server. So Adesh, if you're here, can you put link for Discord server and also for the Telegram group? Even Telegram group discussions are open always, and that's like the quickest way to text us, because we'll be always online in Telegram, Nakshatra team. Did you get that, bro? Anudeep?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Okay. So guys, anyone has any questions, any clarifications, anything?
No, we do not have anything. But if you guys are open to any questions or any discussions, yeah, we can do that.
And one thing is, please fill the feedback form which I put in the neutrino cohort group. That's required for the certificate and the report what we'll be giving.
Yeah.
Okay then. So if nobody have any questions, we can